On the afternoon of October 9th, 2013, in Conway, New Hampshire, what seemed like an ordinary day turned into a nightmare for Abby Hernandez's family. The 14-year-old girl left Kennett High School to walk home as usual, but this time, she never made it home. As the evening passed and Abby still hadn't returned, her mother, Xenia Hernandez, grew increasingly worried. She called her daughter multiple times but received no response. Abby was a well-behaved girl who had never run away or acted out of character. Sensing something was wrong, she immediately called the police to report her daughter missing. That night, a massive search operation was launched. Family, friends, and hundreds of volunteers scoured the town, searching from familiar streets to the surrounding forests. But it was all in vain. There was no sign of Abby. No witnesses, no cries for help, and no security cameras capturing her final journey home. In the following days, police began considering possible scenarios. Did Abby leave on her own? Unlikely, as she didn't take any personal belongings. Could it have been an accident? No evidence of an incident was found along her route. Was it an abduction? If so, the kidnapper had executed the crime flawlessly, leaving no trace behind. As time passed, hope slowly faded. No one knew that at that very moment, Abby was being held captive in a place no one could have imagined. Immediately after Abby Hernandez disappeared, her family and local authorities launched a massive search operation. Rescue teams were mobilized, helicopters scanned the skies, search dogs followed her scent, and hundreds of volunteers scoured every street and forest surrounding Conway, New Hampshire. Xenia Hernandez, Abby's mother, repeatedly called out for her daughter to come home. She appeared on news broadcasts pleading, "If you can hear me, please come home. I love you so much." But there was only silence. Abby's phone had been turned off shortly after her disappearance, making it impossible to track her GPS signal. Missing person flyers quickly appeared everywhere. Schools, stores, train stations, bus stops, and even neighboring states were alerted. But despite all their efforts, no one had seen Abby since she left school that afternoon. 2 months after Abby's disappearance, her mother received a shocking letter. The letter was handwritten by Abby, reassuring her mother that she was safe but unable to return home immediately. Reading the letter, Xenia was overwhelmed with emotion, relieved that her daughter was still alive, yet deeply confused and worried about her whereabouts. Police immediately took action, analyzing the paper and ink to determine the letter's origin. The results revealed that the letter had been sent from somewhere in New Hampshire, but its exact location could not be traced. This confirmed two critical facts. Abby was indeed alive. Someone was controlling her and forcing her to write this letter. While the letter provided the first sign of life, it also deepened the mystery surrounding the case. The letter sparked controversy among the public. Some people speculated that Abby had willingly run away with someone and did not want to come home. Meanwhile, her family and friends strongly rejected this theory, insisting that she had no reason to leave voluntarily. Hoping for a breakthrough, police expanded their investigation, reviewing security cameras along Abby's usual walking route home. But not a single image of her was found after school. A classmate recalled seeing Abby texting before leaving, but because her phone had been turned off, authorities could not access the messages. Meanwhile, anonymous calls came in, claiming Abby had been seen in various states, but after thorough investigation, each lead turned out to be false. With each passing day, hope continued to fade. As the search yielded no new leads, law enforcement began scaling back resources, leaving Abby's family in despair. But Xenia Hernandez refused to give up. She raised the reward to $10,000 for any information leading to Abby's whereabouts. She visited the police station daily, attended press conferences, and fought relentlessly to keep her daughter's case alive. Yet just as the world started losing hope, Abby was still out there, trapped in a nightmare, fighting every day for her freedom. While the town of Conway, New Hampshire was desperately searching for Abby Hernandez, she was trapped in a dark, suffocating space. a metal container deep in the property of her kidnapper. The perpetrator was Kibby, a 34-year-old man who lived less than 30 miles from Abby's home. On that fateful afternoon, Kibby approached Abby as she was walking home. He seemed friendly, offering her a ride since it was getting late. But the moment Abby stepped into his car, the doors locked shut. Before she could react, a pistol was pointed directly at her. Kibby ordered her to stay silent, threatening that if she resisted, he would kill her immediately. Abby's heart pounded in terror, but she knew that any rash action could cost her life. He drove through isolated streets before stopping at a secluded area where no one could hear her screams. He dragged her into a metal container where she would spend the next 9 months in captivity. The container had no windows, only a small ventilation hole, and was secured with multiple heavy-duty locks. Kibby installed surveillance cameras, ensuring that Abby could not escape. From the very first day, Kibby established absolute dominance. Abby was blindfolded, so she had no idea where she was being held. He threatened to kill her family if she attempted to escape. He claimed to have planted landmines around the container, making her believe that any attempt to flee would result in instant death. Kibby was not an ordinary kidnapper. He was highly calculated. Instead of immediately harming Abby, he sought to turn her into the perfect prisoner. He forced her to read books about law, insisting that if she escaped and reported him, she would also be prosecuted for writing a letter claiming she was safe. He controlled all the information she could access, ensuring that she remained disoriented and unaware of the outside world. He granted her small privileges, making her dependent on him. For example, if she behaved well, he would let her step outside briefly for fresh air. In the first few days, Abby was completely panicked, but she quickly realized that if she wanted to survive, she needed a strategy. Avoid direct resistance. Abby understood that if she fought back or attempted to escape too soon, she would not get a second chance. Gain Kibby's trust. She acted compliant, never argued with him, and even pretended to be grateful when given food or clothing. This slowly lowered his guard. Observe and memorize. She paid close attention to every detail, the container's structure, Kibby's routines, and how he locked the doors, hoping to find a weakness. Over time, Kibby started granting Abby more freedom, believing that she had accepted her fate. But in reality, the 14-year-old girl was secretly planning her escape. One turning point came when Abby convinced Kibby to let her write a letter home. In the letter, she could not explicitly reveal her situation, but she left subtle clues, hoping that her mother or the police would notice something unusual. However, the letter did not lead to an immediate breakthrough. Authorities did not have enough evidence to pinpoint Abby's location, and Kibby continued to keep her hidden in the shadows. But at that moment, something shifted. Kibby started to worry. He began to feel that keeping Abby for too long was becoming a serious risk, and this was the opportunity Abby had been waiting for, a chance to finally put her escape plan into action. After months of captivity in a metal container, Abby Hernandez had come to understand her kidnapper, Kibby, better than anyone else. He wasn't just violent, he was obsessed with control, and that was his greatest weakness. Abby realized that if she wanted to survive, she couldn't just wait for rescue. She had to create her own opportunity. Although he still kept Abby locked up, Kibby's behavior began to change. The police continued their investigation, Abby's family relentlessly pushed for answers, and media pressure intensified. Most importantly, Kibby himself was growing paranoid. He feared his crime would be exposed and frequently reminded Abby, "If you say anything, I will come back and kill you. If you go to the police, I will destroy everything you love." These threats no longer scared Abby. Instead, they revealed his fear, and she knew she could use that against him. Since direct resistance wasn't an option, Abby played a more strategic game, gaining Kibby's trust. She acted obediently, didn't resist, and even pretended to sympathize with him. She made him believe she no longer wanted to escape. Feeding his fears, she subtly reassured him that she didn't want to hurt him, and that if he let her go, she wouldn't turn him in. Planting the idea of a safe future, she suggested, If you release me, I'll tell the police I ran away. It will have nothing to do with you. At first, Kibby was skeptical, but over time, he started to believe Abby. Confident in his control over her, he failed to see that he was the one being manipulated. In July 2014, after 9 months of captivity, Kibby suddenly made a decision. He told Abby, "I've thought about it. I'm letting you go. But if you betray me, you won't live long." Abby pretended to be grateful, acting relieved as if she truly believed him. But deep inside, she was already preparing for her next move, bringing Kibby to justice. True to his word, Kibby followed through. He drove Abby to a remote road more than 30 miles from where she was kidnapped and let her out. Before driving away, he warned her one last time. The moment Kibby disappeared from sight, Abby ran with all the strength she had left. She reached the nearest house, banged on the door, and screamed for help. When the door finally opened, the people inside saw a thin, pale, trembling girl standing before them. With the last bit of energy she had, she managed to say, "Please, call the police. I'm Abby Hernandez." After 9 months of living in fear, Abby was finally home. But her fight wasn't over. She didn't just want her freedom. She wanted to make sure the man who stole her childhood faced justice. After Abby Hernandez escaped and provided detailed information about her kidnapper, the police had everything they needed to make an arrest. But before they could catch him, Nathaniel Kibby was already on edge, leading to his final mistake. After dropping Abby off, Kibby could not rest. He feared that she would break her promise, call the police, and that his arrest was inevitable. In the following days, his paranoia intensified, destroying evidence. He started getting rid of items he had used to control Abby, including documents he had forced her to sign. Altering the crime scene, he painted over the metal container, moved objects inside, and attempted to erase any traces of his crime. Avoiding neighbors. Previously, he would move around his property freely, but now he remained hidden, not wanting to draw attention. But it was too late. When the police arrived, they had more than enough evidence to charge him. Just 1 week after Abby's escape, police arrested Nathaniel Kibby at his home in Gorham, New Hampshire. When officers entered, Kibby did not resist, but his face showed shock and despair. He knew his time was up. As they searched his property, police found the metal container where Abby had been held for 9 months, weapons and ammunition, the tools he used to threaten and control his victim, surveillance equipment, restraints, and notes detailing his methods of psychological manipulation. With such overwhelming evidence, Kibby was immediately taken into custody and officially charged with multiple serious offenses. At trial, Abby bravely stood before the man who had held her captive. She was no longer afraid and spoke with confidence, recounting everything she had endured. She described how he forced her into the car, the months of threats and manipulation, how she tricked him into letting her go. The entire courtroom fell silent as Abby testified, a young girl who had conquered her fears to seek justice. The prosecution presented undeniable evidence, including Abby's testimony, physical evidence found at Kibby's home, documents proving his attempts to control her psychologically. Although Kibby tried to deny some of the charges, he could not refute the overwhelming evidence. After days of trial, the jury delivered its verdict. Kibby was sentenced to 45 to 90 years in prison for kidnapping, assault, and unlawful confinement, illegal possession and use of firearms, threatening and endangering the life of his victim. As the sentence was read, Kibby hung his head in silence. He knew his life was over. Abby's family wept, not just because justice had been served, but because they could finally close this terrifying chapter. But for Abby, her journey was far from over. She had escaped her captor, but now she had to face a new battle, overcoming trauma and reclaiming her life. Although Abby Hernandez was rescued and her kidnapper was brought to justice, her nightmare did not end the moment she returned home. 9 months in captivity had left deep psychological scars that would take years to heal. In the first days after returning, Abby suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, experiencing recurring nightmares, waking up in terror, convinced that Kibby was still watching her, fear of being alone, constantly feeling unsafe, even in her own home, loss of trust in others, believing that anyone could be a potential threat. But Abby refused to let her past define her. With the support of her family, mental health professionals, and friends, she slowly found her way back to peace. Instead of drowning in fear, Abby made a bold decision to face her past head-on and use her story to inspire others. She participated in awareness programs about personal safety, especially warning young people about the dangers of abduction. She shared her experience in the media, not to relive the trauma, but to offer hope to other survivors. She sent a powerful message to others who had endured trauma. You are stronger than you think. Don't let your past define who you are. Abby Hernandez's story is a testament to human resilience and survival. It reminds us that staying cautious around strangers is essential for personal safety. In dangerous situations, staying calm and observant can create a chance for survival. Trauma does not define a person. How they rise after hardship is what truly matters. What are your thoughts on this story? If you were in a similar situation, what would you do? Share your opinions in the comments.